Mafia boss finds his wife forces janitor to eat leftovers at his birthday party. What he did shocked everyone. Eat every bite or you're fired. Those were the words Dominic Russo heard when he walked into his own birthday party. His wife Vanessa stood in the center of the room holding a plate of leftover garbage, forcing their janitor to consume it in front of 200 laughing guests. For 30 years, Dominic had killed without hesitation. He'd built an empire on fear and ruthlessness. But watching this woman, Maria, though he'd never bothered learning her name until that moment, tremble as she tried to swallow humiliation along with cold food, something inside him snapped. What he did next cost him his marriage, his reputation, and nearly his life. But it also revealed the secret about his past that explained everything. Stay with me until the end. Because what happened next didn't just end a birthday party, it ended an empire built on appearances and started one built on honor. Before we begin, hit that subscribe button and drop a comment telling me where you're watching from. Now, let's see how one moment of cruelty changed everything. Dominic Russo had built his empire on a foundation of rage and remembrance. For 45 years, he'd carried the weight of where he came from, and for 25 of those years, he'd made damn sure no one could ever push him down again. But standing in that doorway, watching his wife humiliate a woman whose name he barely knew, Dominic felt something he hadn't experienced in decades: shame. He came from nothing. The kind of nothing that leaves marks on your soul deeper than any blade could cut. The worst neighborhoods in the city, where hope went to die and dreams were luxuries no one could afford. His mother, Elena Russo, had been his entire world. She was a cleaning woman, one of those invisible people who made wealthy homes spotless while her own hands cracked and bled from harsh chemicals. Dominic had watched her leave before dawn and return after dark, her back bent from scrubbing other people's floors, her voice hoarse from swallowing insults she couldn't afford to answer back. She died when Dominic was 20. He was just starting to make his way up in the world, just beginning to claw his way out of poverty through means both legal and otherwise. The call came at 3 a.m. His mother had collapsed while cleaning a mansion in the hills, the same hills where Dominic's own fortress now stood. Heart attack, the death certificate said. Natural causes. But Dominic knew the truth that no coroner would ever write down. Elena Russo had been worked to death by people who saw her as furniture, as something less than human. She was 54 years old. At her funeral, none of the families she'd worked for came. Not one. They sent flowers with generic cards signed by assistants who'd never met her. That was the day Dominic Russo vowed he would never be powerless again. Never invisible. Never at the mercy of people who could destroy you with indifference. He built his empire with ruthless intelligence and calculated violence. He learned that fear was currency and respect could be purchased with the right combination of money and menace. For 25 years, he climbed until there was no one above him to look down. The mansion he bought sat on the highest hill in the city, marble floors polished to a mirror shine, floors his mother never got to walk on in life, though Dominic sometimes imagined her ghost gliding across them with the pride she'd been denied. Every crystal chandelier, every imported tile, every obscenely expensive detail was a monument to what he'd escaped and a middle finger to everyone who'd ever made his mother feel small. But somewhere in the climb, somewhere between the first million and the first kill, Dominic had forgotten something crucial. He'd forgotten that the distance between the powerful and the powerless was thinner than he wanted to believe. He'd forgotten that the people who cleaned his floors might have stories as heavy as the one that still woke him up at night. 3 years ago, he'd met Vanessa Ashford at a charity gala, the kind of event where wealthy people paid thousands of dollars to feel good about themselves for one evening. She was everything he thought he needed, beautiful in that effortless way money and breeding produce, sophisticated, connected to families whose names appeared in history books. When she smiled at him across the champagne fountain, Dominic saw legitimacy. A chance to wash the blood from his reputation with marriage to old money and social acceptance. The wedding made the society pages. Vanessa Ashford marrying Dominic Russo, new money crashing into old bloodlines. Her family held their noses, but took his donations. His associates raised eyebrows but kept their mouths shut. And Dominic told himself he'd made the right choice. But he'd married an image, not a woman. He'd been so focused on what Vanessa represented that he never really looked at who she was. There were signs, of course. Small cruelties he chose to ignore. The way she spoke to waiters like they were trained dogs. How she dismissed staff with a wave of her hand, never learning names, never acknowledging humanity. Dominic told himself it was just her upbringing, the casual carelessness of people born into wealth. He told himself it didn't matter. Tonight, he saw the truth he'd been running from. His wife wasn't cruel because of her upbringing. She was cruel because cruelty came naturally to her, because she genuinely believed some people were worth less than others. And by marrying her, by ignoring the warning signs, Dominic had become complicit in the very thing he'd sworn to rise above. Maria Delgado had worked for him for 10 years. 42 years old, widowed for 5, mother to children whose names and ages Dominic couldn't recall if his life depended on it. She arrived before anyone else and left after everyone was gone. She never complained, never asked for time off, never made herself noticeable. His mansion was spotless because of her, floors gleaming, surfaces dust-free, everything in its place. The invisible architecture of comfort that people like him took for granted and people like Vanessa exploited without thought. In 10 years, Dominic had probably seen Maria face to face, maybe a dozen times. Brief passings in hallways. A nod when she held a door open for him. Once, maybe twice, a quiet "good morning, sir," that he'd returned without really hearing. She was invisible to him, just like his mother had been invisible to her employers. And that realization, standing there watching his wife force this woman to eat garbage for entertainment, hit Dominic like a bullet to the chest. Tonight, Maria was impossible to ignore. Tonight, with tears streaming down her face and her dignity being stripped away bite by humiliating bite, she was the most visible person in the room. And in her terror, in her desperate attempt to endure just to keep her job, Dominic saw his mother's ghost staring back at him with accusing eyes that asked one simple question: "What kind of man have you become?" Vanessa's voice carried across the dining room with the casual authority of someone who'd never been told no. Our help should understand their place. It's really for their own good, teaching them boundaries. She said it like she was discussing dog training, her tone light and conversational, as if the woman trembling before her wasn't human enough to be humiliated by the words. The guests had formed a loose circle around the spectacle, and their reactions painted a portrait of complicity that made Dominic's stomach turn. A woman in a red dress stood closest, laughing with genuine amusement, actually encouraging the cruelty with little gestures, a nod, a smile, a whispered, "Make her finish it all." In the corner, a man in an expensive suit kept his eyes carefully averted, sipping champagne with studied concentration, pretending he couldn't see what was happening 3 feet from him. By the window, a couple whispered to each other, smirking, finding entertainment in another person's degradation. And Vanessa's best friend, God help them all, had her phone out, filming the whole thing with the detached interest of someone documenting a zoo exhibit. Maria's voice was so quiet Dominic almost missed it. "I'm sorry, ma'am. Please, I have children." Vanessa cut her off with a laugh that could have sliced glass. Then they should learn what happens when people overstep. Consider this a teaching moment for your entire family. 30 minutes earlier, before Dominic had arrived, Maria had been doing exactly what she'd been hired to do. She'd been cleaning the dining room, making sure every surface gleamed for the birthday celebration. Vanessa's diamond necklace, a $50,000 piece Dominic had bought for their second anniversary, had been lying carelessly on the corner of the table, right where someone might knock it off while setting up the buffet. Maria had carefully moved it to the side table, placing it gently on a silk cloth where it would be safe from champagne spills and careless elbows. That simple act of thoughtfulness had somehow become a crime. Vanessa had seen her touching the necklace and exploded with the outrage of someone who'd been waiting for an excuse. "You don't touch my things without permission. Ever." The accusation had been immediate and vicious, ignoring Maria's explanation, ignoring logic itself. You need to be taught a lesson about boundaries, about knowing your place. Now, watching it unfold, Dominic saw Vanessa add more scraps to the plate. Half-eaten canapes someone had nibbled and abandoned. Cold pasta with congealed sauce. A garnish of wilted parsley someone had pushed aside. She arranged it all with theatrical precision, an artist of degradation composing her masterpiece. Every bite, Vanessa said sweetly, her smile never wavering. Or you're fired. And I'll make sure no one in this city hires you again. I have friends everywhere, Maria. You'll be cleaning toilets in truck stops by the end of the month. Maria lifted the fork with shaking hands. She tried to eat, her face contorting as she forced down cold food that had been touched and rejected by strangers. She gagged once, throat convulsing, but managed to swallow. Dominic watched guests shift uncomfortably in their expensive shoes, watched them look away, watched them do absolutely nothing. Some even justified it to each other in whispers that carried farther than they intended. Well, the help does need discipline. She probably was getting too familiar. Vanessa's just maintaining standards. Others stayed silent, but their silence was its own form of violence. They were afraid to challenge Vanessa Russo, afraid of what speaking up might cost them in this world where social standing was currency and mercy was weakness. The scene triggered something in Dominic's memory, a door he'd kept locked for 33 years suddenly blowing open. He was 12 years old again, hiding behind a door in a mansion much like this one, watching his mother work. She was on her hands and knees scrubbing a marble floor, and a wealthy woman in pearls stood over her like a prison guard. Faster, the woman had snapped. My guests will be here soon, and this floor better be perfect. His mother's hands had been bleeding. Dominic could see it even from his hiding place. Chemical burns from the harsh cleaners, raw skin where she'd scrubbed too hard for too long. But she said nothing. She just worked harder, faster, her breath coming in labored gasps that even then Dominic had known weren't normal. She was dying by inches, and both of them knew it, but the bills had to be paid and the rent was due, and there was no room for weakness when survival hung by such a thin thread. Young Dominic had wanted to burst through that door. He'd wanted to scream at the woman in pearls, to pull his mother away, to do something, anything. But his mother had looked up at precisely that moment, had seen him watching, and had shaken her head with an expression that still haunted him. Stay quiet, Mijo, her eyes had pleaded. We need this money. Stay quiet. So he had. He'd stayed quiet while his mother bled and suffered. He'd swallowed his rage and his shame and learned that powerlessness had a taste, bitter and choking, like poison going down. That shame had followed him for years, through every deal, every act of violence, every step up the ladder. He told himself he was building power, so he'd never have to be silent again. Now, 33 years later, he had all the power anyone could want. The question burning in his chest as he watched his wife torment a woman who looked so much like his mother had hurt. The question was simple and terrible. Would he use it? Vanessa lifted another forkful toward Maria's face, and Maria's dignity finally shattered like glass hitting concrete. Quiet sobs shook her shoulders. Please, Mrs. Russo, she whispered, the words barely audible. My children need this job. I'll do anything. Anything. Vanessa's smile widened, and in that expression Dominic saw every cruel face that had ever looked down on his mother. The same entitlement, the same casual cruelty, the same fundamental belief that some people were simply worth less than others, that their pain was entertainment, that their desperation was amusing. Anything, Vanessa purred. Then finish every bite. And say thank you when you're done. Say thank you for the lesson. Something inside Dominic snapped. Not like a rope breaking, but like a bone, clean, sharp, irreversible. The sound seemed to echo in his head even though it was perfectly silent. That smile on his wife's face, that same smile he'd seen 33 years ago, was the last thing his silence could survive. Stop. The single word cut through the room like a blade through silk, sharp, clean, absolute. It carried 25 years of commanding men who killed for a living, who understood that tone the way animals understand thunder. Every head in the room turned toward the doorway where Dominic stood, perfectly still, perfectly controlled, perfectly terrifying. Vanessa's hand froze midair, the fork still extended toward Maria's face. For a split second, her expression registered genuine surprise, eyes widening as if she'd forgotten her husband existed. Then the social training kicked in, and she manufactured a smile, bright and brittle as cheap crystal.
Dominic.
Darling, you're early. We were just... I said stop. His voice had gotten colder, if that was possible. Winter had nothing on that tone. He moved into the room with deliberate steps, each footfall a statement of intent. The guests parted instinctively, bodies responding to a threat their conscious minds hadn't fully processed yet. They created a path without deciding to, the same way people step aside for funeral processions. 25 years of commanding respect showed in every movement, the set of his shoulders, the precision of his gait, the unwavering focus of his gaze. His eyes never left Vanessa's face, and she was starting to understand that whatever she thought would happen next, she'd miscalculated badly. Her smile faltered, uncertainty creeping into her expression like cracks spreading through ice. Dominic positioned himself between his wife and Maria, his body a physical barrier to the cruelty. When he spoke again, his voice was different, not softer, but directed with surgical precision. Stand up. Maria looked confused, terrified that any movement might be the wrong one. Her eyes darted between Dominic and Vanessa, trying to read which master to obey. Stand up, Maria. He said her name deliberately, making it real, making her human. You're done here. Done being treated like this. Maria rose on shaking legs, her body responding even as her mind struggled to process what was happening. She was afraid to believe in rescue, afraid this was some new form of torture she didn't understand yet. Vanessa's laugh came out nervous now, the social armor showing cracks. Dominic, we're just having fun. It's your party. Don't be so. His eyes finally met his wife's. Ice meeting fire, and the ice won. Fun? This is what you call fun. He turned to address the room, his gaze sweeping across faces that suddenly found the floor fascinating. Did anyone try to stop this? Silence. The kind of silence that has weight and texture. Anyone speak up for her? Defend her? Say this was wrong. More silence. The complicity was deafening, louder than any accusation Dominic could voice. That's what I thought. Cowards. All of you. The woman in the red dress, the one who'd been laughing, tried to save face. It's not our business how you manage your staff. Dominic's glare cut her off mid-sentence. Get out. Then, louder, to everyone. All of you. Get out of my house. Now. The guests scrambled for exits like rats abandoning a sinking ship, their relief at escaping mixed with indignation that they'd been dismissed like common help. Vanessa's panic was rising now, her voice climbing an octave. Dominic, you're embarrassing me in front of our friends. Friends? He almost laughed. These people watched you torture someone and did nothing. They're not friends. They're accomplices. You're overreacting. She's just the help. She's a person. The words came out like bullets. With a name. Maria. Say her name. Vanessa blinked, her mouth opening and closing. The realization hit Dominic like a physical blow. His wife had employed this woman for 3 years and genuinely didn't know her name. Had never bothered to learn it. Had never considered Maria human enough to require that basic acknowledgement. The room emptied in an awkward chaos of clicking heels and slammed doors, expensive perfume and cheaper excuses trailing in the guests' wake. When the last one left, the silence that settled was different. Heavier. More honest. Now it was just 3 people. Dominic, Vanessa, and Maria. And everything was about to change. Dominic's voice softened, but the authority never left it. Sit. Please. In a real chair. Not as punishment. Maria hesitated, her eyes instinctively seeking Vanessa for permission. That single look, that reflexive need for approval from her tormentor, broke something in Dominic's chest. She'd been conditioned like a beaten dog, trained to believe her survival depended on reading the moods of people who saw her as disposable. Maria, in this moment, there's only one person you need to listen to. Me. She sat carefully on the edge of an ornate dining chair, her posture rigid, still waiting for the trap to spring. Still expecting punishment to arrive from a direction she hadn't anticipated. Dominic took a breath and said the words he'd spent 3 years avoiding. My mother was a cleaning woman. Vanessa's shock was almost comical. What? You never told me. You never asked about my family, just my money. The truth of it hung in the air like smoke. He turned back to Maria, needing her to understand. Elena Russo. She started cleaning houses at 14 to support her family. Came to America with nothing but determination and the belief that hard work meant something. She raised me alone after my father left. That bastard couldn't handle poverty, but my mother, she handled it like a warrior. His voice steadied as the memories flooded back. 3 jobs. Sometimes 4. She kept me fed, clothed, in school. Endured insults that would break most people. Impossible standards from people who treated her like furniture. And she died at 54 on her knees, scrubbing someone else's floor. Vanessa started to speak, but Dominic's look silenced her. Heart attack, the death certificate said. Natural causes. He laughed bitterly. But I know the truth. She was worked to death by people who saw her as less than human. His gaze locked onto Vanessa's face. People like you. She used to come home with chemical burns on her hands. Raw, bleeding skin from cleaners that cost more to replace than she was paid per hour. I remember her crying, not because of the pain, but because some wealthy woman had screamed at her for missing a spot on a crystal chandelier. And you know what the worst part was?
She apologized to me.
The strongest woman I ever knew, apologizing because she couldn't afford new shoes for my school year. His voice cracked on the last words, years of buried grief surfacing. I built this empire so I'd never be powerless again. So I'd never have to watch someone I love be destroyed by people who thought money made them better. But somewhere along the way, I became the enemy. I married someone who treats people exactly like those who killed my mother. Vanessa's face had drained of all color. Dominic, I didn't know. That's the problem. His words were surgical. You didn't know because you never cared to know. You saw the suits, the power, the money, the reputation. But you never saw me. Never asked where I came from or what made me. He turned to Maria, his expression gentling. Maria, tell me, what happened tonight before I arrived? Her voice shook. I moved Mrs. Russo's necklace to keep it safe. From spills, from accidents. I was just trying to protect it. That's all? You protected her property, and this was your reward? Maria nodded, tears flowing freely now. Tell me about your life. Your real life. The story came out in broken pieces. Her husband Carlos, dead 5 years in a construction accident. 3 children, twins struggling through community college, youngest in high school. 3 jobs to make ends meet. Mornings here, afternoons at a laundry service, nights cleaning an office building downtown. She hadn't had a day off in 2 years. Could barely afford rent in a neighborhood. She was afraid to let her youngest walk through alone. Groceries were a calculation, textbooks a luxury, hope a commodity she couldn't afford. Tonight's humiliation had been her breaking point, but she'd endured it anyway. Because she needed this job. Because her children needed to eat. Because survival didn't leave room for dignity. Dominic listened to every word, and with each one, his decision crystallized into something unbreakable. Maria's voice steadied as she continued, and Dominic listened with the focus he usually reserved for business negotiations where lives hung in the balance. Vanessa fidgeted uncomfortably, examining her manicured nails, shifting in her seat like a child forced to sit through a boring sermon. Carlos had been 38 when he died. 3 stories up on a construction site with no safety equipment, no harness, no net. The fall killed him instantly, small mercy in a situation with no mercy at all. The company denied liability, blamed worker negligence, refused death benefits. Maria had been left with funeral costs she couldn't afford and 3 traumatized children who needed her in ways she couldn't provide. The twins were 15, the youngest only 10. All of them needing their mother while drowning in grief for their father. That first year had nearly destroyed them. Nearly homeless 3 times, eviction notices piling up like death sentences. Maria took any job available, any hours offered, stitching together survival from scraps of employment. Her children learned to make meals from whatever was in the cupboard, to do homework alone at a kitchen table, to parent themselves because their mother was always working, always gone, always trying to keep them afloat. She missed school plays, parent conferences, birthdays. The guilt was crushing, couldn't provide enough, couldn't be present enough, but she kept going because giving up meant losing everything, including them. "I never wanted pity," Maria said quietly. "Just wanted to work. Your family gave me steady hours, good pay compared to others. I thought if I just stayed invisible, worked hard, I'd be okay." She paused, and the next words came out like broken glass. "But tonight, I wasn't invisible enough." The heartbreak in that statement, the idea that her survival depended on disappearing entirely, made Dominic's hands curl into fists. Vanessa finally spoke, and her words confirmed everything Dominic had been avoiding for 3 years. "I still don't understand what the big deal is. She touched my things. Staff needs boundaries." Dominic stared at his wife like seeing a stranger's face on a familiar body. "Boundaries? You humiliated her because she protected your property." Vanessa's defensiveness came out sharp. "This is how things work in my world. In my family, the help knows their place. It's just how it is." She actually shrugged. "Besides, it was just a little embarrassment. It's not like I hit her." Dominic stood slowly, his decision crystallizing with the clarity of ice forming. "How much do I pay you, Maria?" $15 an hour, sir. 3 days a week, 6 hours each." He did the math instantly. $270 a week. Roughly $1080 a month before taxes. He turned to Vanessa. "How much was that necklace you're so worried about?" $35,000. "It was a gift from you, actually." She said it with pride, like the price tag made her special. "So Maria makes in 2 years what you wear around your neck once." The numbers were obscene, the disparity grotesque. Vanessa shrugged again. "What's your point?" "My point is you're sitting there dripping in wealth while torturing someone who can barely feed her children. And you feel nothing. Absolutely nothing." His voice went deadly quiet, the tone his men had learned meant someone wasn't walking away intact. "Pack your bags, Vanessa." Vanessa laughed, genuinely thinking he was joking. "Oh, come on. I've never been more serious in my life. You're done here. Done in this house. Done in this marriage.
Done."
The laughter died in her throat like a strangled sound. "You're divorcing me? Over the maid?"
"No."
"I'm divorcing you because of who you are." Maria just helped me see it clearly. "You can't. We have a prenup."
"Yes."
"Which means you get nothing. Absolutely nothing." Vanessa's confidence crumbled, her face shifting through expressions like a deck of cards being shuffled. "Dominic, think about this." "I am." His voice was steel. "For the first time in 3 years, I'm thinking clearly." Dominic pulled out his phone without breaking eye contact with Vanessa. He scrolled through his contacts with deliberate slowness, each second stretching like wire about to snap. When he found the name he wanted, he pressed call and put it on speaker. "Richard? It's Dominic. I need divorce papers. Tonight." Vanessa's panic rose in her voice like floodwater. "You're calling now? It's your birthday. You can't be serious." "Best birthday gift I could give myself. Freedom from you." Richard's voice came through tinny but professional, years of late-night calls from demanding clients having taught him never to sound surprised. "Dominic, it's midnight. This can wait until morning, surely." "It can't wait. Draw up the papers. I want them ready to sign by morning. First thing." "On what grounds?" Richard was already typing. Dominic could hear the keyboard clicks. "Irreconcilable differences. Mental cruelty."
"Take your pick."
"You'll find evidence if you need it." Vanessa cycled through tactics like a desperate actress trying different characters. First anger. "You're humiliating me." Then tears, manufactured and theatrical. Then seduction, moving closer with practice movements. Finally threats. "What will people think? Your reputation will be ruined." Dominic's expression never changed. They'll think I have standards. Something I should have had 3 years ago when I met you. You need me for legitimacy, for connections, for social standing. I needed a partner. I got a parasite. The words were surgical, precise. There's a difference. I'll fight this. My father's lawyers will destroy you in court. Your father's lawyers play golf with mine. They won't touch this. They're too smart, and they know what I know. Richard's voice cut through the argument. Dominic, I'm looking at the prenup now. Want me to review the terms? Please. Richard's tone became clinical, reading off clauses like a coroner listing cause of death. Ironclad prenuptial agreement, drafted by the best lawyers Dominic's money could buy. Anything brought into the marriage stayed with the original owner. Dominic had owned everything, the mansion, the businesses, the accounts, before they married. In case of divorce for cause, which mental cruelty definitely qualified as, Vanessa was entitled to nothing. Not $1. Her gifts, all that jewelry Dominic had bought to keep her happy, the cars registered in his name, the clothes purchased with his credit cards, technically his property. The bank accounts she accessed freely? Joint access. But his money. The penthouse in the city, where she hosted her friends? His name on the deed. Even her credit cards were authorized user privileges on his accounts. You have 48 hours to remove your personal items, Dominic said, his voice flat as a judge reading a sentence. Personal items only. The jewelry I bought you stays. Every piece. Vanessa's hand flew to her neck, touching the diamonds there like they might disappear. The car I gave you, registered in my name, stays here. I'll have it detailed before I sell it. Your designer wardrobe, purchased with my cards, technically mine. But I'm not petty.
Take it.
All of it. You'll need something to wear. But everything else, every luxury, every comfort you've gotten used to, gone. Vanessa's world was collapsing in real time, her face showing the calculations running through her mind. Where am I supposed to go? That's not my problem anymore. You're resourceful. You'll figure it out. Your father has money. Maybe he'll take you back. Through all of this, Maria sat frozen in her chair, watching her world turn upside down while trying to make herself even smaller, even more invisible. Her expression was one of guilt, as if somehow this catastrophe was her fault, as if her existence had caused this earthquake. Dominic saw it immediately. Maria, none of this is because of you. His voice was gentle in a way it hadn't been seconds before. This is because of who she is. Who I let myself ignore seeing for 3 years. You are just the mirror that made it impossible to look away. He turned back to Vanessa. You can sleep in the guest house tonight. Tomorrow morning you're out. I'll have security make sure you don't take anything that isn't yours. Vanessa stood, her composure shattering like the crystal she loved so much. You'll regret this. I have friends, connections. I'll make sure everyone knows what kind of man you really are. Tell them. Tell them I divorced my wife for torturing my employee. See who takes your side. She stormed toward the door, heels clicking violent percussion on marble floors. My lawyers will be in touch. You haven't heard the last of this. Yes, I have. Dominic's certainty was absolute. Richard, you still there? Still here, boss. Make sure the prenup holds. No settlements, no negotiations. Not 1 cent. Consider it done. The door slammed with enough force to make the chandeliers tremble. Silence settled over the dining room like dust after an explosion. The party decorations looked absurd now, colorful balloons and streamers celebrating nothing, a birthday cake with candles never lit, champagne going flat in abandoned glasses. Dominic and Maria sat in that silence for a long moment. Finally, Maria spoke, her voice barely audible. Mr. Russo, I don't know what to say. Say you'll come back tomorrow. We have things to discuss. Fresh fear crossed her face. Am I fired? Dominic's expression softened in a way his men would never believe if they saw it. Fired? No, Maria. Tomorrow, your real job begins. Maria arrived at 5:30 in the morning, just as she had every workday for 10 years. Her hands shook as she approached the service entrance, last night's events playing on loop in her mind like a fever dream. Maybe she'd misunderstood. Maybe the kindness had been temporary, a performance for an audience that was gone now. Maybe today she'd find a severance check and a locked door. Instead, she found a note taped at eye level. Come to my office. D.R. Terror seized her chest. She walked through the mansion on legs that felt borrowed, noticing details that confirmed last night had been real. Staff members were packing Vanessa's belongings into boxes, designer clothes folded with care that their owner had never shown anyone else, jewelry cases being inventoried and locked away, framed photos being removed from walls like evidence of a crime. This was really happening. The dissolution of a marriage, witnessed in cardboard boxes and empty spaces. Maria knocked on the office door with a trembling hand, each tap feeling like sealing her own fate. Come in. Dominic sat at his desk looking exhausted in a way that made him seem more human, less like the untouchable figure she'd spent 10 years avoiding. His tie was loosened, his jacket draped over the chair, dark circles under his eyes speaking of a sleepless night spent making irreversible decisions. Sit, please. Coffee. He gestured to the chair across from his desk. Leather. Expensive. The kind of chair she'd only ever dusted. I'm fine, sir. Thank you. Her voice came out steadier than she felt. Sit anyway. It wasn't a command, exactly. More like an invitation she couldn't refuse. He poured coffee from a carafe into a real cup, not a disposable one but fine china, and slid it across the desk, offering her coffee like an equal. She'd never even been in this office before, let alone sat in it drinking from his dishes. Maria, I've been thinking all night. About choices, about justice, about debt. Dominic leaned back, studying her with an intensity that made her want to disappear. Her heart sank. Here came the real consequences, the reason she'd been summoned. Last night's kindness had been impulse. This morning's reality would be different. I owe you an apology. Maria blinked. Sir, you've worked for me for 10 years. I never learned about your life. Never asked about your children, your struggles, your dreams. I made you invisible because it was convenient. His voice carried genuine regret, an emotion she'd never expected to hear directed at her. Last night, my wife's cruelty was obvious. Mine was subtle, but just as real.
I'm sorry.
Truly sorry. Maria sat speechless. Powerful men didn't apologize to cleaning women. The universe didn't work that way. Yet here, he was looking at her like her forgiveness actually mattered. But apologies mean nothing without action. So here's what's going to happen. He slid a folder across the desk. Maria opened it with hands that had forgotten how to be steady. The words swam before her eyes. Estate manager. Full-time, salary position. And then the number. $85,000 annually. Her current salary was roughly $14,000 a year, cobbled together from 3 different jobs and never enough hours. This was 6 times that amount. 6 times. The number didn't make sense. Numbers like that didn't happen to people like her. That's 6 times what I make now. It's what the position pays. You'll manage household staff, operations, vendors, budgets, everything that keeps this place running. Dominic said it like it was simple, like he was discussing the weather. But sir, I don't have training, experience in management. You've been managing impossible circumstances for years. 3 jobs, 3 children, medical debt, grief. This will be easier. Maria's tears came before she could stop them. Dominic continued, relentless in his kindness. Full health insurance, medical, dental, vision for her and all 3 children. A company car, nothing fancy but reliable. No more 3 bus commutes in the rain. For weeks paid vacation, though he hoped she'd actually take it. Retirement plan with matching contributions starting immediately. I don't understand, Maria whispered. Why? Because you've earned it. Because it's right. Because I can. There's more. He pulled out another folder, this one thicker. Your husband's medical bills from the accident. Hospital liens, collection agencies, credit damage from 5 years of drowning. He met her eyes. All paid. As of this morning, your debt is cleared. Maria's hands shook so violently she dropped the folder. Paper scattered across the expensive carpet. Bills she'd been paying $20 at a time for years, now stamped paid in full in red ink that looked like freedom. Your children's college. The twins are struggling with tuition, yes? Working night shifts to afford textbooks. Dominic didn't wait for confirmation. Full scholarships. Through a private fund I'm establishing. And your youngest still in high school, same deal when the time comes. Maria completely broke down then, years of accumulated stress releasing in sobs that shook her entire body. She tried to apologize, to compose herself, but couldn't stop. Dominic waited patiently, bearing witness to someone's tears without being their cause, perhaps for the first time in decades. Why? She finally managed. Why all this? What do you want from me? Nothing. Absolutely nothing. This isn't a transaction. Then I don't understand. My mother died exhausted, broke and broken. I can't change that. His voice roughened. But I can make sure her story doesn't repeat with you. You have dignity, Maria. Something my wife never had. Something I'd forgotten about until last night. He stood, extending his hand for her to shake, as equals, as professionals, as two people choosing to build something better from the wreckage of last night's cruelty.
Take the job. Take the support.
And show me what difference it makes when someone's actually given a chance. Maria took his hand, and in that grip she felt the weight of possibility, of futures rewritten, of cycles broken. I won't let you down, Mr. Russo. I know you won't. And Maria? Call me Dominic. We're going to be working together for a long time. Within 24 hours, Dominic announced Maria's promotion to the entire household staff. The reaction was immediate and mixed, confusion rippling through the ranks like a stone dropped in still water. Whispers in the kitchen, sidelong glances in the hallways. Some of the longer-tenured staff bristled openly. She's younger than me, one housekeeper muttered. Less experienced. What does she know about management? Dominic called a mandatory staff meeting that afternoon. Everyone gathered in the main hall, uncomfortable in their uniforms, uncertain about what this summons meant. He stood before them without notes, without softening his words. My mother was a cleaning woman, he began, and told them Elena's story, the poverty, the exploitation, the death that came too early from a life spent invisible. Yesterday, I watched my wife torture someone for trying to do her job well. I watched all of you stand silent. That ends now. His gaze swept the room. Anyone who has a problem with Maria's promotion can submit their resignation. I'll write you a generous reference. But if you stay, you work under her authority, and you treat her with the respect this position demands. His voice hardened. Effective immediately, this household operates on respect. No exceptions. Not for guests, not for family, not for anyone. The Employee Dignity Initiative rolled out that same week. Dominic restructured everything. All staff received raises, minimum $20 an hour, up from $15. Full benefits packages appeared like magic. Health insurance, paid time off, actual sick leave that wouldn't cost them their positions. Clear boundaries were established. No personal errands during work hours, no degrading tasks, no tolerance for mistreatment from anyone. Staff could report concerns directly to Dominic, anonymously if they chose. The mansion that had operated on fear and silence began operating on something revolutionary: mutual respect. Word spread through the criminal underworld like blood in water. Other families heard the rumors and laughed. Russo's gone soft. Paying maids like professionals, treating janitors like executives. Some saw opportunity in what they perceived as weakness. He's distracted, vulnerable. Now's the time to move. The Castellano family tested him first, making a play for his dock operations, subtle at first, then bolder when they thought he wasn't paying attention. They learned their mistake in the most brutal way possible. Dominic's response was swift and uncompromising, the kind of message written in blood and fear that his reputation had been built on. 3 of Castellano's top lieutenants disappeared. The docks stayed firmly under Russo control. The message was clear: changed doesn't mean weak. If anything, Dominic was more dangerous now. His organization watched him protect his household staff with the same ferocity he protected territory, and something shifted in the loyalty equation. Fear was powerful, but respect combined with fear was unstoppable. People would die for someone who valued them, not just commanded them. Maria proved Dominic's faith justified within weeks. She transformed household operations with the efficiency of someone who'd spent years making impossible budgets work. She implemented scheduling systems that actually made sense, reorganized inventory to eliminate waste, renegotiated vendor contracts, and somehow saved money while improving quality. Turns out a decade of stretching pennies had made her exceptional with budgets. The mansion ran smoother than it ever had under Vanessa's careless oversight. Staff who'd initially resented her promotion began to appreciate what she brought. Better organization meant better working conditions. Clear schedules meant predictable lives. Fair treatment meant dignity. Maria led by example, working alongside them while managing them, never asking anything she wouldn't do herself. Guests noticed the difference. Service was impeccable, staff professional but genuinely warm rather than coldly terrified. The ripple effects extended far beyond the mansion's walls. Maria's twins graduated college with honors, debt-free, landing jobs that would have been impossible fantasies years earlier. Her youngest daughter excelled in high school, scholarship offers already arriving from universities that recognized potential when it was finally given room to breathe. All three children carried themselves with the confidence that comes from opportunity, from knowing their mother's sacrifices hadn't been in vain. Maria herself transformed in ways that went deeper than the professional wardrobe and confident bearing. She took management courses online, constantly improving, earning genuine respect from staff who'd initially doubted her. She still worked hard, that discipline was bone deep, but no longer worked herself to death. There was space in her life now for her children's graduations, for sitting down to dinner, for rest that didn't feel stolen. Meanwhile, Vanessa's carefully constructed world disintegrated like wet paper. Her friends abandoned her with the speed of rats fleeing a sinking ship. No one crossed Dominic Russo, not for a woman who'd proven herself cruel and stupid. Her father's family distanced themselves, embarrassed by the scandal. "You had one job," her mother said coldly. "Keep him happy. You couldn't even manage that." Without Dominic's money, Vanessa couldn't maintain the lifestyle she'd married into. The penthouse went first, she'd never owned it anyway. She moved to progressively smaller apartments, each one a step down the ladder she'd spent her life climbing. Designer clothes got sold off piece by piece to pay rent. The manicure stopped. The spa treatments ended. Reality had sharp edges, and Vanessa was bleeding from 1,000 cuts. Eventually, she found work at a department store, one of the same stores where she'd once demanded VIP treatment and made salespeople cry with her impossible demands. Now she was the one behind the counter, being ordered around by managers half her age, folding clothes that cost more than her weekly paycheck, smiling at customers who treated her exactly the way she'd once treated service workers. Karma, it turned out, came with a price tag and a time clock. And Vanessa Ashford, no longer Russo, never really his, was learning that some falls don't end with a soft landing. They end with the realization that the person you were never mattered as much as you thought, and the person you'd become was someone even you couldn't stand to be. 1 year. 365 days since the birthday party that had detonated Dominic's life and rebuilt it from the rubble. His 46th birthday approached, and this time he planned something radically different. No society crowd, no performative celebration, no 300 guests who measured friendship in utility. This year would be intimate, 30 people who actually mattered, not hundreds who were merely impressed by his name. The invitation he sent to Maria was handwritten. "As my guest, not my employee. Please bring your children. Dominic." Party night arrived with an intimacy that felt foreign in rooms built for spectacle. 30 people instead of 300. His most trusted associates and their families, mingling with household staff in a way that would have scandalized the previous year's crowd. The boundaries that usually separated people by class and function had blurred into something beautiful. This wasn't hierarchy, this was family. Maria arrived in an elegant dress, confidence radiating from her like light. She moved through the room with ease earned through a year of proving herself, of transforming from invisible to indispensable. Her children accompanied her, the twins already graduated and employed, the youngest thriving with scholarship offers that kept arriving. Staff members were present as honored guests, conversations flowing naturally between people who'd learned to see each other as human rather than function. Dominic stood and tapped his glass, the room quieting immediately. Last year, on my birthday, I learned the most important lesson of my life. His voice carried the weight of that truth. I learned that power isn't about who fears you, it's about who you choose to protect. I learned that the people we ignore are often the ones who deserve our attention most. His gaze found Maria. This woman taught me that dignity isn't given. It's inherent. She survived impossible circumstances with grace I can only aspire to. He extended his hand toward her. Maria, would you stand, please? Maria rose, embarrassed but proud, her children beaming beside her. Dominic continued, 1 year ago, I witnessed cruelty, but I also witnessed courage. Your courage to endure, to protect your children, to maintain dignity when others tried to strip it away. You've transformed this household with your integrity, and you've transformed me by reminding me where I came from. He raised his glass. To the people who make us better.
To the courage to change.
To family, chosen and earned, not assumed or purchased. To family, the room echoed, glasses catching light like promises kept. Later, when the party had softened into comfortable conversation, Maria approached Dominic on the balcony. Thank you. For everything. You saved my life. Dominic shook his head, the gesture gentle but firm.
No, Maria.
You saved mine. I was becoming exactly what I hated, blind, cruel, disconnected from everything that mattered. You held up a mirror and I finally chose to look. Maria's smile carried a year's worth of transformation. Your mother would be proud. Dominic's eyes glistened in the city lights. I hope so. I really hope so. The year had brought changes that rippled outward like circles in water. Maria's youngest daughter would soon give her valedictorian speech, its opening line already written. My mother taught me that dignity isn't what others give you, it's what you refuse to surrender. Maria herself was training a new estate manager, passing forward the opportunity she'd been given. Dominic's private fund had built a community center in his old neighborhood, youth programs offering kids the chances he'd had to claw for with bloodied hands. Even Vanessa had changed, though whether it was growth or just exhaustion remained unclear. She still worked retail, still lived small, but the cruelty in her eyes had dimmed to something closer to understanding. Humility forced through circumstance, perhaps, but humility nonetheless. At his mother's grave, Dominic had finally found words that felt true. I finally understand, Mama. Power is for protection, not domination. I'm sorry it took me so long to remember. True power isn't measured by who fears you, it's measured by who you choose to protect when no one is watching. Dominic Russo learned that lesson at his birthday party, and it cost him a wife but saved his soul. It gave Maria Delgado the life she'd always deserved and her children futures that had seemed impossible. Sometimes the smallest acts of cruelty reveal the deepest truths, and sometimes the strongest act of power is simply choosing kindness over convenience. That's not weakness. That's wisdom. And wisdom, in the end, is the only empire worth building. On the mansion balcony, Dominic and Maria stood looking over the city lights together. Not as boss and employee, not as savior and victim, but as two people who'd survived, transformed, and chosen to build something better from the wreckage of cruelty. Happy birthday, Mr. Russo. Thank you, Maria, for giving me one worth celebrating. Inside, the party continued. Laughter and conversation, the sound of people who valued each other beyond utility. The mansion glowed with warm light, no longer a fortress of fear, but a home built on respect. And in that glow, two lives that should never have intersected had become permanently, beautifully intertwined. The city stretched below them, full of people fighting battles no one could see, carrying burdens no one acknowledged. But in this mansion, on this night, two people had proven that change was possible. That empires could be rebuilt on honor. That the strongest walls weren't made of marble and steel, but of dignity, compassion, and the courage to see people as they truly were.